are ready today. Woo! Thanks, everybody. Always great to be here. Don't you look forward to Tuesdays? I mean, I really like Tuesdays. They're just a great day. I think about we're going to have a great speaker. The weather's going to be good. It's just a good day. So let me give you a few announcements. I was looking on Canvas and I saw a lot of you are doing fabulous. Excellent job. A few of you are struggling a little bit, but I want to just make sure we're clear. So pop quiz. How many points do you need to get an A in this class? How many know the answer? How many points do you need to get an A? It's not 300. Any other guesses?
180. 180.
180 points. Okay, so go into Canvas and look at how many points you have. And then we're a little bit past halfway through, but half of the assignments are basically due. So you should be around 90 points. At this point, 90 to 100 points. I've seen as high as somebody's got like 120 points, and I've seen as low as much lower than that. So look at your assignments. You got to get them turned in. The big ideas are easy. They only take a few minutes. The networking events are a little bit harder, but I've heard many of you have already done the networking event. You just got to write it up. So get at least one of those turned in. I went through and counted out of our class of 170. We have about 30 that have turned in a networking event, and 9 of them have turned in both. So 9 of them are complete. The rest of you have a little bit of work to do. So to that event, to that extent, we try to tell you every week what networking events are coming up, so you can have you can get those done. How many have done one and just need to get it written up? Let's kind of see. Okay, great. That makes me feel better. Get those turned in. It's really easy. How many are still looking for one networking event, please? Okay, here's a few options for you. So tonight, from 6 to 8, on the 4th floor, we have VentureCon. That's where student businesses are sharing their businesses. And there is a, you just come at 6 o'clock, 4th floor, and go around, see the businesses. Are we having them do they get stamped? Do they get food? You get a giveaway. So come and be there, part of that. It should be fun. We're giving away a Pura unit, Pura Sense thing that dispenses fragrance. Okay, the next thing is we have a competition going on. We have 3 teams from UVU are participating in the Utah Entrepreneur Challenge. You get to see all the videos. Now, it's fun to watch these videos and see what other students are doing for their business idea. Go watch the videos and please vote for one of the UVU teams.
You can vote for all 3.
You can vote for all 3? You get 3 votes?
3 times, yeah.
Okay, you get 3 votes. And go check them out. But this is really fun. Now, I'm going to give you bonus points. If you go watch the videos and vote, you're going to get a little confirmation email that says your vote was tallied. You got to turn in your email so that they make sure nobody's stuck in the ballot box. But go and vote, and then just send a copy or a picture screen of that to Maddie. You get 5 bonus points. So that'll take the place of one of your big ideas. Okay, and it really is fun. It's really fun to see the things going on. Any questions on that? Okay, next we have on March 30th, Discover Your Passion Workshop. It's going to be taught by our own Brianna Hale at the Entrepreneurship Institute. Now here's the great thing. There's 3 workshops with this, and if you finish all 3, you can get $500 to start your own prototype. So we talk about great networking events. Go to the ones that pay you. That's a really good way to go, or that feed you, or they're just really fun for you. So that's coming up March 30th. Where do they go to find that out, Megan?
So the UVU tickets or the Entrepreneurship website or UVU events, any of those places.
UVU, just look up UVU Entrepreneurship Events and you'll find it. So that's a fun one. Not only will you learn some great stuff, but there's we want to help you get started with your business. We also have a We Lift program coming up on the 6th of April on business finance. That's at 8 o'clock in the morning, April 6th. And then also the Rev Road is on April 7th at 11 o'clock, food involved down in Provo. They'll have some speakers and you get to interact with the community. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 events coming up just in the next couple of weeks. Okay, anybody have questions on those? You'll really have fun if you go to all of them. You'll make money, you'll get food, you'll meet some good people. Okay.
Question.
Question.
Is the list of those just in a book that we can pick up or a flyer or something?
Well, is it being recorded? Can you hear me? So you can watch it on the first of the video.
Okay.
But again, go to the UVU Entrepreneurship Institute webpage. Most of those are there. The Revro, it's an automatic every Wednesday and every first of every month. And then the UEC is a once a year thing, and it's a tough competition. We got 3 teams in. That rarely happens, but we got 3 great teams. And they win money if they get the most votes for their video. So they'll get a couple $1,000 for winning that part of the competition. So why not support them? We're the biggest school in the state. We ought to have the most votes for our students. Okay, good question. You're laughing. Did I say something?
We should have most votes.
We should have the most votes. All right. Now, I got to tell you, this is just so fabulous because Cydni Tetro has been a leader, a founder, really a pioneer in the women in entrepreneurship and women leadership in the state for a while. Anytime you think of, okay, if I need somebody that is really connected, that understands what's going on, that has been a leader, been involved, the first name that comes up is always Cydni Tetro. She has started a number of companies. She founded the Women's Technology Council, I think, and with the partner a while ago that has been really driving technology influence among women in the state. A big part of the STEM education aspect of the state. She's been been part now of the Brandless event, or the Brandless name of the company. She's going to tell you all about that. Graduated from BYU. This is somebody you want to make sure you add on LinkedIn to get her connected. You're going to get flooded. But really a great person to know, really influential, but man, you can learn so much from Cyd. So we'll turn it over to Cyd Tetro.
Let's see, thank you. I'm super happy to be here, and I know we have people online and people in the class, and hopefully we can just make this really interactive. I'll give you kind of a couple, so as I go through this presentation, you're gonna hear me share a bunch of stories about experiences that I've had and things that I've woven through. As Mark said, I did go to BYU. I actually do sit on the board of trustees of UVU, so I'm very heavily involved here at the school. I did my undergrad in computer science, and then I did my MBA. And I've really spent my entire career thinking about how do you create like transformative customer experiences, take those to market. And so what you'll see as I go through are some of these ideas, some of the thoughts that I have around how I think you should think about the things you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, and really how you're building those steps in your career and in your journey, whether it's entrepreneurship or whatever. For me, like my career doesn't look like a straight line. I didn't take one job out of college and then stay in all of those same places. I've had an opportunity to do a lot of really cool things. I spent about 6 years at Disney, driving technology commercialization inside of a group that was created by Ed Catmull. I've had the opportunity to start companies, exit them. Today at Brandless, I'm running a company. We raised $118 million last summer. It's actually one of the largest fundraise by a female entrepreneur in the state. We do a very large strategy around acquiring companies and integrating them in and driving growth that way. We acquire about 3 companies a quarter and bring them into the portfolio. So there's lots of really cool things that I've had an opportunity to do, but I would say it's very much about kind of the mindset that you jump into the things that you care about and where you're trying to go. And then in today's world, what's really cool is you get to be the architect of your future. You guys won't jump into jobs or you stay at the same place for 30 years. That just doesn't work today. So what that means is your mindset, the way that you approach life, the way that you approach your career, and all the other things that are important to you, will ultimately be in your control. And you will get to architect the outcomes that you want based on what you're willing to do. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about what I think that means and how you lean into it. How many of you have heard the term blue sky? I got a handful of people in here. So when I worked for Disney, we actually had a group called the Blue Sky Group. So just think for a moment, we actually have lots of clouds in the sky today, even though it's been warm weather. If the sky is blue, what happens? What do you see in the sky? You can see the sun, that's right. But there's like nothing, right? It's like there's an unobstructed view to everything that's out there. There's unlimited possibilities. There's nothing that hinders the horizon. There's nothing that stops your view from looking up into what that is. You literally have a limitless, unbounded perspective of what could become possible. You look at the blue sky next time. There's nothing that stops what you could imagine could become true. And I would actually argue it's a really hard mindset to live in all of the time, because in our daily lives, we tend to think about all of the things that hold us back. We tend to think about, well, I didn't get this right score on this test, or I didn't get this job, or I got turned down on this, right? We create all of these barriers that then create limitations on what we think we can become or what we can accomplish. So at Disney, this Blue Sky Group was all about unlimited possibilities. If we could imagine it, we could build it. And that's actually what the group did all the time. So I sat in a unique group inside of Disney, which was called Disney Research in Imagineering. And our group was across all of the Disney companies, theme parks, ESPN, ABC, studios, interactive. And our job was to figure out how technology would transform the Disney company over the next decade. And then I got to make businesses out of those and roll them into Disney. And this Blue Sky Group was always pushing the limits, like what could become possible? And think about that question, like if we could do this, what would become possible in the outcome? It was a question we asked all of the time. Now, like how do you push the limits of that? And then we would actually invent those things. Most of them you will never see. We invented rides you're never gonna see. We actually went on those rides. In big warehouses where they were created. We invented experiences that we would play test inside of theme parks. Most of them never came to fruition. But we had a mindset and said, what would be possible if we did this? And then we jumped into creating those. And then every so often, that would create transformation that would change everything. But that ongoing mindset was a culture inside of the organization. It was something that allowed you to think past the limitations that we normally think about. And for me, it became infused in how I think about all of the things as we go forward. Now, we dropped this, so who knows if it's still gonna like us, which is fine. So I'm gonna talk to you, I actually have this talk kind of broken into 3 sections. And they kind of are topics that juxtapose each other that I want you to think about what they mean and then in context of yours. Like, I don't think that's mine. You're totally fine. I was just hoping it wasn't mine. Oh wait, my screen did not change over here, so hold on. There we go. Okay, now this remote won't work. Okay, negative. We must have killed it when we dropped it. So there you go. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about this idea of deals and bets. So when you think of deals, I think of deals as almost any relationship that you're going to broker. It's not just a sales deal. It's not just a deal that you're trying to close. You do deals all the time. Think of all the relationships you create in work and in your environment. You're always brokering value. You're always creating deals. Then every so often, you're gonna make some bets. You're gonna make bets in your life of things that you think accelerate what your objectives are. Sometimes you're gonna make those bets with some ambiguity. You're not gonna be perfect. You might not even know the outcome, but you have to be willing to sit in both of those ecosystems. So let me give you a couple of examples. So as mentioned in Brandless today, right, I think that everything that you should be about as you create relationships and as you go forward is how do you create value? People want to build relationships with people they believe are value creators that will extend them. So today, we have a deal pipeline that sources 1,000 deals a month. We filter that down to delivering usually 1 or 2 letters of intent to purchase every month. It's a lot of companies that you're filtering through. In the course of all of those conversations, the only thing that matters is the value equation. So people do bad deals all the time, but when you sit down, you're trying to hire someone, when you're trying to figure out if you should have a co-founder in a business, you're trying to figure out any type of relationship, you're trying to sell something to someone, it's all about the mutual value that's created. And if you don't find it, and then you try to create that deal, it will almost always not work out. It will always fall apart at some level or the other, because if you don't create mutual value, you will not be on the winning end of something long term. We actually say this all the time in our deals. We first and foremost want to do deals with people we like, with people we trust, and then we know we'll make money together. And we follow that sequence all of the time in the way that we operate. So, there are plenty of times when we're doing deals that the value's not gonna be there and we have to walk away. We actually walked away from a deal fairly recently, and I will tell you because we didn't think that there was mutual value creation across the two ecosystems, because both parties weren't leaning in to say, am I bringing everything that's gonna make you successful? At the same time, you're bringing everything. Like, both parties are doing that. So if you think about deals, you think about relationships. If you're not on the same page with what you can create and what you're willing to give, you should walk away from that deal. And sometimes it means that you lean into creating value, even if you don't fully know you'll get something in return, because it's the right way to handle those relationships. You should always be about doing something that creates value in everything that you're trying to build, because I promise you, it comes back a million times. Now, kind of leaning into that, I coined this term a little while ago called deal sense. So I've watched many deals. I've walked into many rooms where I'm doing big negotiations, and I've watched people, so think of like the last time you had to go in and convince a group of people to follow you, to do something with you. So you walk into that room and you're probably really well prepared. Maybe you got a presentation, you've got your speaking points, you know everything that you're gonna tell someone to get them to join you, right? You're like, oh, and this could be anything, right? You're convincing a group project to go your direction, could be a club that you're doing, could be at work. We're always trying to convince people to champion with us. So oftentimes we're really prepared. So we walk into those rooms, but what happens is people forget to read the room. They forget to sense actually how you might need to pivot in the moment, because I'm really well prepared. Like, I walk in here and I'm gonna give you my case. But if you don't build the deal sense, which is your ability to actually read what people need from you, rapidly adjust, and then deliver the right response, you actually will never get the deal, ever. Because what happens when you walk in and you start going through your slides and you didn't notice that one slide in, no one was paying attention to you? It happens all the time. Because you misread some cue, you didn't understand what they actually needed. I mean, the best way to start any conversation like that is having people actually tell you what they expect out of that conversation. Like, what are they gonna need from you in that moment so that you architect to them? So this ability to have deal sense, it's actually something that's hard for lots of people, because it requires you to no longer worry about everything you're saying, to understand the person in the room, and then meet them where they're at in order to convince them in the outcome that you want. So I had a deal that I was doing a couple of years ago. We had been working with a Fortune 10 company, and prior to me, someone had constructed a deal. We were making a couple $100,000 off of the deal, but it was like in the red. We were not making any money off of this deal. And there was no way we could continue to spend all the resources and get the return that they needed. So I knew I had to go to the president of this division. We were good friends at the time, and he was running about a $10 billion business. But I basically had to go figure out how I was gonna get him to give me a multi-million-dollar deal in order to keep my relationship with him. And for me, this is where like deal sense, and you see it come out, right? Because I could walk into that room with George and I could have said, hey, here's the 10 things that are the reason, that you have to give me more money. This is what I need, right? Laid out all of the use case. Or I could have walked into him and said, hey, we know we've got this great partnership. We're driving results. It's not quite working for us. Will you help me figure out how to make it work? This is where we're coming from. Can we find a mutually agreed upon solution? And we did. Ultimately, we moved that to a multi-million-dollar contract from that one meeting. And we did it not because I went in to dictate exactly a plan and a proposal and an execution methodology, but because you have enough sense to know he's got business drivers I don't appreciate. He has economics he has to figure out in his own company. He has people he has to get to buy off on that deal. And if I can help find his win-win, he'll give me mine because he doesn't want me to lose money. He wants me to be his partner. And in doing so, we will create something there. So this idea that you can have deal sense, I would argue that every one of you need it. It is your best way to convince people to line up with you and to keep going. When I worked at Disney, I worked in this Imagineering group, but I didn't have like teams of hundreds of people. But I usually had to convince hundreds of people to follow my project and to go give me their time. Right? That is the exact same thing. I might not have been taking their money, but if I'm gonna go ask someone for their time, I better be able to figure out how it's good for them and how to convince them. And it requires this idea of deal sense, the sixth sense that you build around working with people and doing things that people are willing to just rally behind you on. And it takes a ton of practice along the way. And then I also believe, along that way, you're gonna end up having to make a number of bets. And sometimes you're just gonna make bets along the way. Okay, so when I left Disney, I built a company called 3D Plus Me. It's a 3D printing business. We could literally make you Iron Man. So we built a software that took 3D scans of your face. Eventually Hasbro built a toy line for it, but you could also buy yourself as like full 3D printed collectibles. And we partnered with Marvel, Star Wars, the NFL, Major League Baseball, Assassin's Creed, like you name some property in gaming, entertainment, or sports, we probably had to deal with them. And we would allow you to become part of your favorite game. But every so often, a lot of times in this company, I had to place bets. And I had to do it knowing that there was an imperfect world. So we originally launched the company at Comic-Con in San Diego. It's by far the best Comic-Con you could ever go to. If you ever get a chance to go to Comic-Con in San Diego, you should go. It does not look like any other thing around the country. So we launched at Comic-Con with this Marvel experience. You could go in, you could become Iron Man. I think you could become Iron Man, Black Widow, Captain America, and then a special character called MODOK. If you're a Marvel fan, you might know that. It's this kind of funny looking guy that was a mechanized organism designed only for killing. So it's like this exclusive one that you could get at the conference. So we launched, and we're this tiny startup company at the time, but we met a bunch of good relationships along the way. Marvel.com launched with us there. And I got home from the show, and I got a phone call from Walmart. And this was at the end of June, early July. And they said, hey, Sid, how fast could you be in Walmart? Can you launch for Superhero September across Walmart? And this is 60 days. We just launched. Like we got one scanning station, right? We're just barely inside of Comic-Con and rolling out. And this was a moment for me where I got to make a decision if I was willing to make a bet, knowing that I did not have any of the answers, but also knowing that the call from Walmart was most likely not coming again. Because that's sometimes what happens. Sometimes the call that comes to you doesn't come again. So you get to figure out if you're willing to place a bet on a company. So I get this call, and I'm like, we should totally do this. We should launch in 60 days. We haven't really done this before. Okay, no problem. But then our current product price that we launched at Comic-Con at was $129 because it was a full 3D printed collectible. There was only one printer at the time that could print you in color. We're like launching it. So I figure I need a toy. Like I need to get under 50 bucks. How am I going to get under $50 with our material? The only way to do that was to call the Hasbro guys, figure out if I could partner with them because they hold the global toy license for Marvel. So only if I go partner with them and get them on my team, and we're talking 60 days. These guys are big companies. Big companies move not at the speed of light. And so we called Hasbro. Eventually we get in. They agree to let us do that, but then they start telling us all of these things. So of course I can't get products from China. How am I going to put customized heads on a bunch of characters in 60 days and get them out there? So we ended up partnering with Hasbro, creating a toy line, and launching it in September across Walmarts across the country because we were willing to place a bet and just make things happen. That included things like Hasbro shipped us all of the action figures. We popped the heads off of them, replaced them with 3D printed heads, repackaged them, and delivered them to customers in order to make that timeline. I still have the heads at my house because I cannot get rid of them, even though this is a number of times ago. So I got like Captain America and Iron Man heads, thousands of them. But it's just a reminder for me constantly that sometimes you just have to make a bet, right? That call's not coming again. I don't get these opportunities all of the time. I'm just gonna lean in and do it, and I'm gonna figure out every problem that's gonna come. They're gonna come. And we hadn't even thought about making a toy before that phone call. And we had to build scanning stations and deploy across the country. So sometimes your mindset is about making bets. Sometimes they go your way and sometimes they don't. But if you're not willing to be a little bit risky, chances are you won't get the return that you want. So I think that part of the blue sky mindset is this idea that you can be really great at deals, but you can also make some bets. I also want to talk to you a little bit about opportunities and failures because I think they go hand in hand. So when I came out of my undergrad, I had no idea what I wanted to be, just so you know. But I came out of computer science, so lots of people want to talk to women in tech. It's awesome, still true today. And I did 100 job interviews from the Career Placement Center. And I talked to all these places. I actually had taken like the GRE and the GMAT, and I applied to grad school, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, but I wanted all of my options on the table. Eventually, I ended up going into product management inside of companies. And so I started my path in just kind of normal technical career paths. But I got to this point in my career where I decided, and actually sometimes wish I would have done it earlier, where I felt like I could have accelerated my pathway into entrepreneurship a little bit earlier. I think you guys are in a unique position to be able to do that because your risk profiles are lower. You can take all of these risks along the way. But I had an opportunity to go to Disney. And for me, one of the philosophies I've lived by, which I think is part of blue sky mindset, is like, how do you take advantage of opportunities that come your way? So I'd been working at a company, I'd just come off of one. I always say this, but I'm always trying to figure out what to do with my life. That's a frequent theme, even for me, or like, what is the next thing that I'm supposed to do? And one of my friends had gone to Disney to head up this Disney research group in Imagineering. And I called Tom, and Tom's brilliant. Like, he did his PhD in computational physics at Harvard, like the smartest person you would ever know. I called Tom, he's running this group, and he's like, Sid, there might be this interesting thing for you to come do at Disney, because we're starting this group. And I said, okay, that's cool. So I fly down and I talk to him, and I come back, and then he's like, okay, Sid, you can have this job. Well, let me tell you about it. We've never created this job before. We actually don't know exactly what it looks like. We don't know how long it lasts. We can't tell you all the projects that you're gonna work on or exactly what will happen, but it could be really cool, and we think you should come do that. That was the conversation. And I was like, you're right, I should come do that. In about a half of a second. Because one other time was Disney gonna call and ask me for that opportunity. What would have happened if it had not worked out in 6 months? No big deal. I would have had great experience, and I would have left. But I would have walked away knowing far more than I would have had not. Now, I ended up staying there for just over 5.5 years. But those opportunities, they come your way. And sometimes the fear of them, the unknowns, seriously, it was exactly like that. There were no guarantees in that offer, not one guarantee. It was a brand new initiative. And they didn't know what the outcome was, and they were still trying to justify it. That call would never have come again. And there will be plenty of moments in your career or in your life where those calls will never come again. And if you get too afraid to just jump, you won't get the benefit of what they can teach you. And I promise you that sometimes they don't all work out. But when they do work out, that's awesome. And when they don't work out, it's because you're supposed to be in a different path. So when you think about blue sky mindset, it's imperfect, but you own this opportunity to architect what you will become. And it totally changed my career trajectory. I'm forever grateful that I jumped into that opportunity and the path that it led me down. Now, a couple of other things, and I'm just gonna point out a couple of like other kind of commentary on places where I do think that I failed and I shouldn't have, because you're gonna have some failures along the way. So when I was raising money for a company, and I got flown down, we flew down to Beverly Hills on this Sunday afternoon to meet in this really swanky Beverly Hills hotel to negotiate a deal. And I'm sitting at one end of the table, and the guy that I'm negotiating against is at the other end of the table. Now, prior to this meeting, our team knew exactly what we needed. We knew the money that we needed to raise, and we knew the deal that we needed to architect. But in that meeting, he asked me a question. And I paused. So he said to me, Sid, do you want me to buy your company, invest in your company, or do a joint venture? And in my moment, I said, you know what, wonder if I answer wrong. Wonder if I give him an answer that is not the one that he wants, and he decides not to do the deal. Like, that was all the things that were running through my mind, which are totally valid, right? You think about it all the time. But I walked into that meeting fully prepared. Like, I knew what I needed from him, and I didn't say. Instead, I said, you know, any of those are good with us. What do you think? And I will tell you, I've often reflected, it was 100% the wrong answer. I should never have done that. I knew what I needed, and I should have asked for it. And by not asking for it, actually delayed that deal more than 6 months. It impacted the company. It impacted what we could have done with that money if it had come in earlier. And that was fully on my shoulders. I had that moment to ask for what I needed. And I didn't. And it set things back. So sometimes those opportunities or those failures are because we get afraid of what might happen in the unknown. So don't do that. Just ask for what you need. Make it defensible. Make it, you don't have to be ignorant or rude about it, but you have to be willing to defend what you want and find a solution to yes. And if you don't tell someone what you need, they won't know. Like, I should have said to him, these are all of the things that I need from this partnership in order to make this work. Now, there have been other places where I would say, like, that there's been failure along the way. So there's an instance in my career where I ended up working for a board that was probably the worst board that I ever worked for. And it was all because the entire thing lacked the ability to collaborate. So they had an agenda, and they were never going to come to the other side. They were never going to meet me and my executive team halfway. That collaboration created basically the inability for me to ever be successful. And a couple of notes on that. So I started recognizing this as I was in that position. And the problem solver in me wants to solve those problems, right? I want to believe that I can take whatever situation I'm in front of and I can make it work. So I brought in a bunch of my kind of advisors, my like investor advisors and executive advisors, and I actually had them interview my board and my board didn't know I was doing this, so I just had them talk to these guys, right? So these advisors of mine, I'm like, I'd really love you to meet my board. I'd love you to give me some perspective. My board was totally willing to have those conversations. And every one of my advisors came back and said, Sid, you will never be set up for success here. You should leave now. Universally, every person. Now, I had employees who worked for me, right, that really like held me in that place. But as I reflect back on that, it took me 8 months. So I moved away from that company 8 months after those initial conversations. I should have moved faster. When something's not working, when all the indicators tell you that you're not going to be set up for success, the amount of time that you spend there, this is actually true with the people that you work with. You want everyone to be set up for success. You want to be set up for success. And if you're not, find a way to get out of that situation and into another opportunity. You have too little time in your life. You should spend it doing good things that build you up and compel you forward. And so when you find yourself in situations like that, which I did, I should have been faster to exit from that company. I should have been faster to walk away. But all sorts of things hold you back. And every time that I've been slower to make decisions because of all the loyalty issues that I might feel, I end up not setting all of the other things up for success. So you're gonna have some failures along the way. You're gonna have to walk away from some things that you really wanted to make work. But you have to also be strong enough to walk away from those things and find the next thing. I am also a big believer in not burning bridges. So while you have to walk away from things, I also don't believe you're blowing up things as you walk away from them. I believe that you're just exiting because it's the right decision for you, and that there is another ecosystem that you're going to go work in. So when you think about, you're going to have opportunities, you're going to have failures, you're going to need to embrace both of those in order to get the outcomes. And sometimes you have failures in companies or with people. It happens all of the time. But you just have to have this mindset of it's okay and you'll get through it. Okay, so next I wanted to take you into this idea of growth and resilience. These two words, like what does it mean to create growth for you in your personal development along the way? So I believe you have to be very intentional about the steps that you want to take. Any lack of decision is still a decision, right? If you stay in a place, if you decide to not do one thing versus the other, or if you just decide making a decision is too hard, you ultimately made your decision and your outcome. When I was working for one of my very first startups, I decided so I came through computer science and then I did my MBA. So I had a fair amount of good background technically in all the product management stuff and a really good sense of the business side, but I had never raised capital. When I jumped into this startup, we had been there a couple of years, and I decided that one of the skills that I wanted was to learn how to be a really great fundraiser. I wanted to raise capital, I wanted to be in those meetings, I wanted to go through that process. And I found time in my career that I get very intentional about new things that I want to learn so that I can get to that experience on the other side. So I actually went to my CEO at the time, I was chief marketing officer, and I said, hey, Darren, will you let me, I want to participate in this next round of financing. I want to help create the presentations, I want to be in those meetings, like I want to lean in and I want to help go through that so that I could gain that experience. And he let me, and I gained a great amount of experience going all over the country, doing all these pitches, looking at all sorts of deals, and then letting that fuel the next step. I have done that time and time again. There's lots of stuff I don't know, but I think you want this mindset of you can be very intentional. What's something you want to learn? What's something you want to grow into? And then you do it. If you're starting a company, you don't know lots of things. So how do you surround yourself with people? How are you intentional about the skills that you want to learn? How are you intentional about the impact that you want to make? You should do those things. When we started the Women Tech Council, which has now been over 13 years ago, we just knew that we needed a community to help increase the number of women in tech. Right? And so we were very intentional about what we define as our impact and our mission of that, how we go about doing that, and the results that are driven from that. And for me in those career steps, like take them down. Take down the things that you want to learn. You don't feel great here? Go surround yourself with people. Take on that extra opportunity. Jump into some experience here in school that teaches you something that you really want to know. You have an amazing amount of resources at this university that can teach you so many things that you could be interested in. Take advantage of that. Learn everything you possibly can while you're sitting in these seats, because it will set you up to accelerate other things, and then you can learn the next series of things along the way. Lean into all of those things that you have to take advantage of, and especially in schools, like this is the best place that you have to learn. Like everyone's willing to help you. Everyone wants each one of you to be massively successful, and we want you to use every resource in universities and in schools and with people to do those kinds of things. So in addition to that, I think that you have to be a voracious learner in life. There are so many things we don't know. When I went to Disney, so I had all my background in computer science, right? I could program, I knew how to architect things, right? I knew all of those. I didn't come through civil engineering or robotics or mechanical engineering. I had to take some electrical engineering courses, but my discipline was in computer science. But when I went to Disney, it was all about robotics, artificial intelligence, computer vision, and 3D. All topics I had not spent all of my career and schooling in, but I got this amazing opportunity to learn them. So the amount of things that I know today in technical domains that I would never have learned was really cool. We have this massive robotics division. This is a robot that was created. So Carnegie Mellon is one of the best robotics universities in the country. The woman who heads the robotics department was in Disney research. So we did a mass amount of robotics work. And then we had a relationship at Harvard and MIT and one at ETH in Switzerland. So really brilliant people focusing on these problems. And I got this opportunity to learn all about this. I could only have started my 3D printing company because of the knowledge I gained while at Disney. I couldn't have told you anything about 3D modeling, creating 3D software, the Python programs to do that, all of the planes required to do that. But because of my experience here and my ability to say, I'm gonna learn a bunch of new things. I know I don't know anything about this. I'm gonna ask questions. I'm gonna be taught by these people. I'm gonna rapidly learn those things. You're gonna get those opportunities all the time. Don't be afraid of something you don't know. Just jump in and ask people questions and learn those things and push you forward, because it opens other doors. And I've had this interesting opportunity in my career, even in the companies that I've started, to do them in vastly different arenas. One of the first companies startups I did was in document management and compliance software. Okay, that's really far away from where I sit today. But we did everything from compliance, we did everything from peer-to-peer networks. And then I jumped into a company where we built an infrastructure on the Facebook API. We built 100 million users, 23 million monthly actives. And we did this all in social platforms. And then I jumped to Disney, but then I started a 3D printing company, and then I did a digital transformation company, and today I'm doing a consumer company. Those are very different topics. I didn't find one pathway through, but this theme of how do you build customer experience, how do you drive acquisition, and how do you learn along the way and ramp up, it's been a consistent theme. And I think that's a mindset that required by all of us to say, I'm just gonna jump in, I'm gonna learn things that I didn't know, and because of that, I'll get opportunities that come. Another one that I think on this growth and resilience, there are lots of things that you will be better at if you take feedback from other people. This is a really hard one. How many of you are good at taking feedback? Okay, yeah, maybe you guys are good at taking feedback. Just kidding. So getting feedback and giving feedback, it's a hard thing because you feel like you might hurt someone's feelings and you don't know how someone else will take the feedback when you give it to them. When I came out of grad school, I was pretty sure I knew everything. So when I was running product management for a very technical product at the time, and when we would meet, and I came out of one of my meetings, one of my vice presidents, he called me afterwards, and he's like, Sid, you have to stop talking in all of those meetings. You don't need to talk all the time, and you can just listen. And it's one of those moments where you get to decide how you react, right? So I could have said, he's totally wrong, I know exactly what I'm doing, and I'm just gonna keep going the same way that I am, right? Who's he to tell me that I should stop talking, right? Or I could have said, maybe that's true. Maybe there's something that I'm doing that is going to limit my ability to work with these teams or to actually listen to what they're doing. And every one of us has a choice when feedback comes our way, because it usually means we're not like we should evaluate that perception that we're creating. So in that moment, I decided that he was probably right. And I am forever grateful that he gave me the feedback, because I might not have, like maybe eventually I would have gotten there, but by him giving me that feedback in the moment, I had the ability to become better. I had the ability to say, yeah, you're right, I might be doing something wrong. I'm gonna take that feedback and I'm going to improve. I teach in the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. I've had thousands of entrepreneurs come through, and I teach the growth and the marketing and sales modules. And after every class, they score me, every class. Every class that you walk out of, all the entrepreneurs in the class, they rate you. And then we debrief those right after the class. And now I've been teaching there for like 7 years now, so I get lots of feedback, but every time I get, it's 7's the max. Every time it's like, why did someone rate me a 5? Like it's built into me, like always wanting to know. Like we'll debrief after meetings when we're doing deals, and I'll be like, what should I have done differently? What did we do? Like what could have pushed this along? Did we answer that question well? Where are we going? What could I have done? Lots of people don't do that, because some people think that they know all the right answers and whatever they did was right. But I can tell you that when you have to reflect on feedback, it changes the way that you create your approach. Those people who rate me a 5 in that Goldman program, I'm like, oh, how did I not connect with them? How did I miss something that they needed? How did they not take away from what we were teaching what they needed? What's the delta between that experience? But it is a discipline I think you all have to learn, because you can either be offended, because most of the time it's not great, or people are giving you feedback that you should do some improvement on. That's not great. But if you don't take the feedback, you don't actually move forward fast enough. It makes me a way better teacher to see that feedback. It makes me way better at my interactions with those. It made me a way better contributor when Dave was like, Sid, stop talking. And I said, okay, I should do that. And I've seen that play out time and time again. Give you one other quick story. My oldest son, he actually plays soccer for BYU. But when he was in high school, there was this time when he got reduced playing time on his high school team, not his club team. And he was super frustrated, started spiraling, right? He's like, the coaches are all wrong. I don't know, why are they doing this to me, right? Every decision that they're making, it's totally against me, like I should be playing. And I said to Rye, I'm like, Rye, I have no idea why, but I have this idea. Why don't you just go to the coach and say, hey, I know that my playing time's reduced. What do I need to do to get back to my playing time? So there's like, that's really hard to do, right, to go do that. So Rye goes and he asks, and the answer came back to him. They said to him, Rye, you have a bad attitude. It's showing up on the field, and that's why you're not playing. Okay, so then Rye gets a choice, right? He either gets to say, well, what do you guys know? You're the reason for my bad attitude. You're the reason that I'm not getting playing time and I feel so angry about this. Or he can decide to change his attitude and see if he can get his playing time back. Most of feedback is about our own interpretation and what we internalize and our response. Are we gonna blame someone else? Because sure, the coaches were decreasing his playing time. He could be really mad. And this was all up to him, right? And Rye's like, okay, maybe I do have a bad attitude. Maybe I should change that attitude. And his recognition of that changed his playing time within a week. So be willing to take feedback, to find those paths forward, and to think about that. It's the best way to build companies. It's the best way to build teams. It's the best way to get people united in the things that you want to move forward and that you're trying to accomplish. And then the other thing I really believe that we all have to do is be a little bit more fearless. So I had the opportunity to hike the Puerto Moreno Glacier in Argentina in the Patagonia a couple of years ago. When you hike this glacier, it's one of the few living glaciers in the world, because it's always moving. Like the ice is cracking around you all of the time as you walk on the glacier. But as you hike this glacier, there's these huge crevices that go like 200 feet down or more. You can't even see into the abyss, that you just jump over. And as I've thought lots about those, there are these moments where you get to decide how fearless that you will be, right? Where there's a bunch of unknowns, there's things that could go wrong, it's an imperfect solution, but moving forward could take you to really great places. And I think that's the place that I've decided that to build my career and use my decisions is to be just a little more fearless. Doesn't mean there aren't situations where I'm not afraid, right? Or I'm worried that the outcome won't go exactly like I want. But it's this mindset that happens when you say, I'm gonna go for it. I know everything around this, and I'm just gonna take the leap. And I'm going to be willing to take whatever comes from that, because the place that it moves me forward will be better than where I'm at. And so I think I would encourage all of you to find this place. This doesn't mean that you're without fear, but it means you're willing to take action. You're willing to say, I'm willing to just move forward. Despite all the things that I don't know, despite the things that might go wrong, I can just do this. And even despite your own inadequacies. Like there's a bunch of things that you might not know. You might never have done them before. Every time someone starts a company, they've never started that company before. Ever. Like there's no one I know who's ever started the exact same business 10 times. They've all started brand new things. They've all jumped into the unknown. They've all said, I'm gonna take my experiences of the past and I'm gonna jump in. And do you know what, I don't know these things, but it's okay. I'm going to go for it. And I've watched lots of my fellow entrepreneurs be really good at this. Be really good about jumping in with conviction about what they're willing to do, about knowing they don't have all the answers, but getting all of these people to follow them. You wanna be an entrepreneur? That's what it's about. It's about your ability to be smartly fearless in those moments and move great things forward and then be okay with those outcomes because we're gonna fail a bunch of times. Our companies might not even exactly look like what we want them to, but what you learn will set you up for the next thing and the next thing because you are truly architecting where you're headed and what you're going to become along the way. So with that, I just wanted to leave you again with the idea that just like use that blue sky mindset. It requires training. We do this exercise in the Goldman Sachs program where we try to get people to think in the blue sky because most of the time, most of us think in this very conservative space. We're very predictable. Like if you told someone your problem, they would tell you the exact same answer you're going after. But moving into this forward-looking, fresh, exciting space, it requires a bunch of training. We're generally really bad at it because we know all the problems that might exist. The cash we don't have, the constraints we might run into, all of those things. But when you open your mind to think about unlimited possibilities, you make really, really cool things happen. One of the projects that came out of the blue sky work that we did at Disney, which maybe the video will play on this next slide, was at World of Color. So we showed this at an R&D open house. All of these are Mickey ear hats that we felt like at nighttime spectaculars, you should not just be an observer, but you should be a participant in the storytelling. And to do that, we created Mickey ear hats with programmable LEDs in them. So they had flexible PCBs, they had entertainment infrastructure that all mapped them in. They went into the show control systems. This idea was showcased in November. We launched it 7 months later inside of the parks. And this was the opening with the opening night at the PR event, and it was magical. Like the emotion that you felt from that. So this idea that what would happen if everyone became immersed in the experience that was at the theme parks, what would that create? And created this entire opportunity to create really something that was magical for every person that exists. That's the power of the blue sky mindset, that you can ultimately create magical opportunities that you might never have had otherwise. And that's what I would encourage you to do. You're at an amazing time in life, you have amazing opportunities in front of you, and your mindset will determine everything that you ultimately become. So thank you for spending time with me and letting me come and share a little bit of my story today.
What's the best way to connect with you, Cydni?
I am on LinkedIn,
Okay.
but you have to remember my name's spelled Cydni Tetro. And if you connect with me, will you just tell me where you came from? Like UVU lecture series along the way, for sure.
And any quick questions? We've only got like 1 minute, so we have time for one question, and then we'll dismiss. Anybody?
Yeah, go ahead.
So you mentioned that when you were sitting down in that table with the guy in front of you, he presented you with 3 options. What do you think you would have responded today?
What I should have said is I want an investment that looks like this, and this is why. And even if he would have told me, Sid, I want to buy your company, at least I would have told him where I was, and we would have had this place to move from. By saying to him, whatever you want, it made all the decision-making go back on him. And most people don't have time to think through your strategies. That was really the biggest gap. Like, you're the only one who knows what you need. And if you require someone else to think for you, they tend to just stall. If you think about for me, like you think about anyone who sends me an email that requires me to do a bunch of work, I never get to it, right? Like sits in my inbox and I'm like, yeah, that's just way too much work. It's kind of the similar when you're in negotiating deals. If I want something, I should do all the work to make it really easy for the other person. And when I don't, it stops.
And kind of like a part 2 to that question, do you think what you would ask for today is different than what you would have been asking for at that time?
I think so. The question was like, what I would have asked for then is it different, from my perspective today? Potentially, because you learn a bunch about what happens in the market movement. Ultimately, I sold that company to another player in the 3D printing company, not the one who had invested in me. I think at the time, he was doing a ton of acquisitions. I probably could have got a more interesting exit multiple had I done that deal at that time to be acquired versus just an investment.
Okay, thanks everybody. We're doing.
Thanks, you guys. Good luck with everything.